Good morning.
Are you interested in going on the tour?
Yes.
Did you already get wristbanded or?
Not
Okay,
yet.
Yeah, right here. Right
All
here.
right.
And so we're just going to gather right in here, and in just in a few minutes, we're going to start the tour. Then,
All righty
okay?
then. All right.
So Robbie will be your tour guide. He's going to hand out the tickets.
Okay.
The group is meeting here, the first one. So if you hang there, we'll get you with a tour guide and then get you on your way.
All right, so my name's Robbie. I will be your 10-10 tour guide. As we pass through here, we're celebrating Christmas 30th year, so if you'd like and you're above the age of 21, feel free to grab a glass of wine and go along the route. If you can collect your tickets in this little barrel bin here, that'd be great. And when you're all ready, you can grab your glass and come to me.
Now, is that just going to be for lunch?
Al, it's time. Al, your ticket. You have to put your ticket in there.
You guys want some grape juice?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And when you get your glass, we're going to be heading down the stairs. You can follow me this way.
Are we supposed to follow him? Or
Yes. Yep.
Kind of just spread out however you can. Stop right here for a moment.
So the winery runs all year round?
We are open 365 days a year. During the winter, there's not as much activity outside, obviously, but we find things to do. There's wine to be moved around constantly, varying aging periods. So.
Sure. Yeah. My son's never got hurt playing football. I had 5 of them.
Oh, 5 boys?
Yeah. 4 girls.
Oh, okay.
I think that's the majority of the people probably will get started. So
I'll move away from the stairway here.
full tour right after that.
Get your practice right away.
All right, we'll get started here. Welcome to Wollersheim Winery's open house. My name is Robbie. I'm your tour guide for today. A little bit brief history about the winery. It was originally founded in 1840s by wine pioneer Augustin Harazzi. He came here from his homeland of Hungary, claimed that this land reminded him a lot of his homeland. Came here, dug out the back portion of our historic cave, helped incorporate sock, and tried his hand at planting vines here for a few seasons. Unfortunately, he did not anticipate how cold it does get here in the winter, and his vines did not fare very well. He then moved to California, where it's a lot easier to grow vines out there, had a lot more success, and is considered the father of California viticulture. After he left, the Peter Kale family purchased the property in the 1850s. They operated the winery for 3 generations, making wine and brandy until about 1899. There was a very cold winter, really bad freeze, killed off a lot of the vines, followed by Prohibition. That kind of halted the wine production on property for a while until it was purchased in 1972 by Bob and Joanne Wollersheim. They replanted the vines starting with our oldest vineyard in Field 1. It's Marshall Foch grapes. They were planted in 1972, so they are 47 years old. They go into our oldest wine, Domaine Reserve. The 2017 vintage is actually being released today, so definitely try that out. In 1984, Philippe Picard came over as an agricultural exchange student, fell in love with Julie and never left. And then at the time, the winery wasn't particularly thriving, but in 1989, he created Prairie Fumé, which a lot of you are drinking. That really helped save the winery, keep us afloat, and we are celebrating 30 years of it today. And then in 2010, the laws were changed where you're allowed to distill on the same property as a winery. So we did start construction of we started making brandy rather, and then in 2015 we expanded into the distillery that's there now. They also have little separate mini tours over there if you guys have extra time today. You can check stuff out over there. So we'll just shuffle around the corner, talk a little bit about barrels. Spread out, look at the signs and stuff. So we are in our aging cellar. It is 3 out of 4 walls are underground. That does help keep it a little bit more of a consistent temperature down here. We don't want fluctuating temperatures with our wine being stored in here. The walls are also 2 feet thick, which does help insulate a little bit as well. On property, we have about 300 barrels in use, comprised of aging 8 different wines in them. They're all made of oak barrels, white oak barrels. We have particularly 2 types of oak. Wisconsin oak, which is used to give the wine a more kind of strong, robust backbone with aging. Gives it that tanniny flavor. Whereas the other one we use French oak, kind of softens the wine, gives it a nice, smooth, almost vanilla-y finish to it. Vines do have a lifespan, barrels do have a lifespan of about 4 to 6 vintages or agings of a particular wine in them. After that point, the tannin in the oak that gives off that flavor profile we're looking for is pretty much used up. At that point in time, they don't really benefit us to age wine in them at all. So we can do a few things with them. With the expansion of the distillery, there's certain distilling products that can sit in wine barrels that don't need any of that tannin. So we use a lot of them for that. Otherwise, we do have a few guys on property who will make furniture out of them, or just like finish them, repurpose them, stain them and stuff. There is a lot of maintenance that goes on to these barrels. When they're full, they're about 500 pounds, so we don't move them around when they're full. We do have a series of underground hoses that will run over to the fermentation. We can use that to fill an empty barrel. With the pumps, it only takes about a minute and a half to get the 60 gallons out of there. The 60 gallons in each of these is about 300 bottles per barrel. We do go in occasionally and top them. You might have noticed a little topping keg around the corner. We do that because certain wine does evaporate, and we don't want any air in there as little as possible to prevent oxidation. That's what causes wine to go bad. Also, we have a humidifier. We'll wet down the barrels a lot to keep them swell, otherwise they could potentially leak.
The wine is fine before you put it in the barrel, right?
Yep, you could drink it before you put it in the barrel.
Yeah,
It just
yeah.
wouldn't have the same flavor profile.
But it's fine. There's no residue in it at all but when it goes in the barrel.
There could be sediment in it still from the fermentating process, but there's no like tannin or tartar in it, I suppose. Yeah. Does anyone else have any questions about the cellar or the barrels while we're down here?
Do you ever sell the barrels?
We do. So when they're retired, we will either some breweries buy them and they'll make like the vintage across the river. They bought some of our port barrels and they made a beer with it, so it tastes like a port barrel. You can really tell. So that's interesting. Otherwise, we have some available for purchase. They're retired barrels. They're just like finished and they have our logos on them. So yeah, if you're interested in that, definitely ask about it in the retail store. $500. But when we buy them brand new, they're like $1,200. So,
Where do they come from?
so
Where are they made?
They're made in California.
Well, the barrels are.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep, it's kind of interesting. So they cut down the staves, they age them here so they get the aromas of the air and anything in the property, or the terroir they call it, and then they'll send them. So we have a bunch of stacks of staves down by some shed, and then when they sit long enough, we'll send them to California and they'll fit them. Yeah.
familiar with back about 50 some years ago down by Belleville. They harvested all the white oak they could
Yeah.
and cut staves down there and hauled them to Tennessee.
Oh.
They made them into whiskey barrels.
Right.
But that was a big thing down there. I mean, they had
Oh, yeah.
many acres of staves piled up for a year, curing, and then they hauled them down to Tennessee.
All right. Well, we'll move on to the next part of the tour then. Feel free to spread them out. We have some pictures and posters and unpruned vine.
What kind of fertilizer do they use for your vines?
I would have to about that. It varies from year to year depending on the chemical components of the soil.
I use triple 4 feet.
All right, so here we'll talk about our vineyards, the most important part of the winery, where all the vines grow. On property, we do have about 30 acres of planted vines. They consist of 6 different grape varietals. They are all French-American hybrids. They have to be French-American hybrids to be able to withstand our winters. They're very hardy vines. The 3 reds we have are Marshall Foch, Limoulo, and the Marquette is our newest one. And the 3 whites are the St. Pepin, the Cross, and the Brianna. So our oldest slope vines are the Marshall Foch on field 1. They go into our domain reserve, like I mentioned. They were planted in 1972, so they're 47 years old. You'd maybe think that that's getting kind of old for a vine, but they could actually potentially live up to about 100 years and still be producing grapes. And they say roughly the prime is 30 to 50 years, so it's kind of smack in the middle of that. It's resulting in some really nice domain reserves the past few years. Vines are on slopes for a few reasons. Air drainage, they get a nice breeze on there that helps keep the leaves nice and dry. We don't want them to accumulate too much moisture, otherwise they could get mildew and other damaging bacteria. They have good water drainage on the slope. Vines actually have a very extensive root system. They can go down as far as like 30 feet if they need to get water. So they really don't prefer to be sitting in a whole lot of it. So the angle of the slope combined with the composition of the soil, which is a really kind of sandy, limestoney loam mixture, really doesn't retain a whole lot of moisture, which you wouldn't really think is great for like a garden, but it works out really well for these vines. And the third and last reason is our slopes all face southwest, northwest, no, southwest. And then they get the most sun exposure possible, which is good for ripening. So right now, in a few weeks, we'll go out and start pruning. That is an unpruned vine over there. We'll actually take off about 80% of that, give it a nice haircut, trim it down to about 2 to 3 buds. We want about 50 buds on the vine total. We're a little bit behind on that. It's too cold still. We'd like to have started with that already. But once that starts, the buds will really take off and they'll start to grow. They grow ridiculously fast. And then we spend a lot of time making sure that the energy is focused on the T part of the vine where we want all of our grapes to be grown, rather than they'll shoot out all these little buds along the side. We just knock those off. We train the new growth to the T that we want, and then we'll start removing leaves to make sure they have optimal sun exposure for ripening. And then in middle of August, early September is when we start to harvest. We do have a machine. We do a lot of it with that now, but a lot of our steeper slopes, as well as field 1, we still do by hand. We do not grow all of the grapes that we use in our wine production on property. We do, however, produce all of the wines on property. So we do get grapes sent to us from Washington and New York and one from California. If it's a red grape, it'll come as a whole berry. We'll use the skins in part of the fermentation process. We'll talk a little bit more about that in there. Whereas a white grape doesn't have that tannin quality in their skins, so there's no need for them to ship us a whole white grape. We'll just press them there, and send us the squeezed juice. So once we're done with harvesting, the vines lose all their foliage. They start to look like that. And then we'll go into the vineyards and we'll mulch it to help prevent erosion as well as put some fertilizer back in the soil. Does anyone have any questions about vineyards or the barns or anything?
What kind of pH does the vine like?
I don't know. I'd have to ask Slate about that specifically.
Relatively
But
neutral, or
I think
I
it's
would
pretty
assume
neutral.
slightly acidic. Just a little.
Maybe a little bit. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure about the pH.
I put lime on my grapes.
Do you? I've
To
heard
make
that
the
actually
soil
before.
sweeter.
Yeah,
Especially wild grapes like sweet soil.
right.
If you drive around out in the country and you see lots of grapevines on the fence, but none of them will have grapes on them unless you find an area where there's a limestone knoll. There, the grapes are growing on the fence.
Right, and we are our soil is heavily comprised of limestone, so
Yeah, everything
It
around
tends
here.
to be a little acidic
You're
because
right,
it's
probably.
lime.
Yeah.
No, sweet.
Well, limestone is much older.
It's sweet.
Am I wrong?
Are you?
Lime takes the acid out of the soil.
Huh?
Lime takes acid out of the soil.
Oh.
That makes the soil sweeter.
Yeah, I don't know about.
Are you anticipating a lot of winter kill from the 40 below?
They discovered that many moons ago when farmers couldn't raise alfalfa. But then all of a sudden they discovered beside gravel roads, the alfalfa would grow because of the dust from the alfalfa going over the field made the alfalfa grow.
They've
I was
been
always
doing
told-
research in Minnesota about the blood losses here, but you can compensate for it a little bit. You just don't take as much off when you're pruning and stuff, or we won't knock off as many buds when we go back into the vine. But no. All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, we're going to move into the press room.
Yeah, just a little.
Yes, feel free to check out the presses. All right, so this is our press room. Once the grapes are harvested, we bring them up to here and we'll drop them on, we'll weigh them, and then we put them on a sorting table. Then we have people come through by hand and they'll take out the unripe vines or ones that are bad, and we get rid of those. We don't want that. That'll mess with the potential sweetness of our grapes. And then once they go through the sorting table, we'll drop down into the destemmer. This will destem all of the grapes, shoots out the stems out here into a bin. The stems would give us kind of a bitter flavor in the wine, and we obviously do not want that. If it's a red grape when it comes in, we'll destem it and crush it. We'll put it right into a tank. They have a tannin quality in the skids and the seeds, and you want to ferment on top of that for a while, extract as much of that flavor as we can, really get the flavor of the soil then. Whereas, like I said earlier, those white grapes don't have that, so we'll just push them right into our presses, and we press those. We have two presses here, a big one and a little one. We put the grape skins in there and we squeeze them out, get out as much of the juice as possible. And it does a really good job compared to when they used to stomp on them with their feet and stuff. So they'll be collected down in the bins underneath the presses, and then we'll pump them over into a tank, and then we can start fermenting.
Do they wash the grapes at any time?
No, not really. If we were to close them down, we would kind of dilute them a little bit. I don't think we want that.
Well, I've seen places where they, big operations,
Yeah.
they dump them in a tank and then the bucket elevator takes them up and goes into the crusher and simmer.
And I always figured they're diluting their wine with
Right,
water.
I would think so, but yeah, we don't do that. Yeah. We wouldn't have it.
Does all your beers come to this place?
Per year? Yep.
Everything comes to this one spot.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it all goes up there, and then we all weigh it, and we send it down to process it. Except for if it's a white grape that's sent to us from a different state, then it'll come as just juice, and then we'll just take it off the juice tanker and put it right into a filter.
Mr. Quick, be careful of that steak above your head.
Oh.
Yeah, so we can go over into that portion.
Robbie, are other states producing right now, or
As
are
in-
they, like California, you get some of your grapes from California?
Right. Are they producing grapes
Yeah.
right now? I would imagine that, I don't know if they started pruning, but
Come in within about like 6 weeks of each other, so we have a shorter season here. All of our grapes are harvested about the 1st of September, and their grapes tend to be, because they have that longer growing season on the coast, they tend to come in like the end of September or the first week of October, sometimes even into mid to late October. We do sometimes end
Then
up
you're
crushing
waiting
a
another
couple.
year for that to September.
You get any
Yeah,
grapes
so
from
all
other
of our
countries?
growing seasons, no, all of our grapes are either they're custom grown for us by growers that we've been working with for about 30 years now on the West Coast for the grapes that don't survive the winter here, like the Pinot, like the Sangiovese. And then otherwise, we grow everything around here.
So you don't receive any tankers at all from the other states until the end of September?
Right, so everything is either like some of our East Coast fruits, that's the hybrids that won't survive here, because it's cold here. That comes in around the same time that our stuff starts coming in, because they have a similar growing season to ours. The stuff from the West Coast comes in a few weeks later.
Where are yours grown in the West Coast? I mean,
There's the Yakima
storms
Valley
and
of
stuff,
Washington, and then there's a vineyard in Lodi, California for a premium.
are any of these weather things hurting them at all, or?
Right now, it's too early to tell because the vines are still in dormancy, which is a blessing, really. So we'll just have to wait and see.
That wasn't anywhere near where the fires were.
No. luckily.
Good. Good.
All right, I'll let Robbie take you over that way.
Thank you. All right. So this is what we call our fermentation hall. This is a good majority of our tanks. We do, however, have another room over there called the big room. If you go over to the distillery, you can go through it. We have a lot of tanks over there also. We produce about 240,000 gallons of wine every year. That's about 1.2 million bottles every year. That does make us significantly the largest winery in Wisconsin, but there's some massive ones out in California. All of our tanks are stainless steel tanks. They're all made in Sauk City here. Depending on which type of grape you're fermenting, the fermentation process varies. Fermentation is basically the conversion of the sugar in the grapes to alcohol with the help of yeast. So you'll notice these little jackets around the tank. Those are called cooling jackets. We use those to regulate the temperatures of the wine during fermentation. If it's a red grape, we ferment it on the skins and it's a little bit warmer. We do that about 80 degrees for up to 2 weeks, try and get out as much alcohol and make it drier normally, typically, depending on the red. Whereas if it's a white grape, we ferment those a little colder at like 60 degrees for about a week. Sure. So a lot of our determination on when to stop fermentation is done by taste. They do a lot of that in this lab back here, as well as when to stop aging in barrels. A lot of that is done by the palate of Philippe, Celine, and Vic. They really try to focus on getting as much of the terroir, they call it, the flavor of the soil that the grapes are grown in, out of the grapes. So on the tanks, there's a few little components. You might notice there's tasting valves. That's where that's what these are. That's where you get your little sample out to determine how the wine's coming along.
Is there wine in these now?
Some of them do. They have these little, they're called sight tubes on the side.
Yeah.
You can see if there's liquid in them. That one has some. I believe these small ones do. These two over here are open. They don't have anything in them. But I guess I didn't talk about ice wine. We also do have another additional barrel aging area. I'm sure you noticed there's no way that there's 300 barrels in that cellar. It's back there with the doors closed. You can see pictures of it right here, I guess. I guess the only thing I realized I forgot to mention was we do make ice wine. Like I said earlier, most of our harvesting is done during August and September. Ice wine, however, we'll leave about an acre of that typically. We leave the grapes on the vine until early December. So that additional few months, they accumulate a lot more sugar in their grapes, as well as then we wait for it to be in between 5 and 15 degrees in early December. So it's really nice and frozen. And then all the water that's in the grape is frozen. So then we'll go out really early in the morning, pick those all by hand. And then when we bring them back here, we crush them. It's just like the sweetest juice ever. It's crazy. And
The problem is keeping them frozen so you can squeeze it.
right, and the longer you leave them on the vines, the more brittle they get. So good gusts of wind will come through and knock off some. We obviously don't want that. We do. We put a netting over them for birds, and we actually did just put up where we had ice wine this year, this huge 10-foot deer fence. Fleet's a great hunter, but we got quite a few deer around here, and they really like grapes. So. But I suppose that just about concludes it. Unless you guys have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer those. Otherwise, make sure we'll go up into the winery store. There's quite a few demos going on today. Philippe's doing a winemaker's talk. There's a pruning demo by Bruce, our vineyard manager, as well as a bunch of things going on over at the distillery. You should definitely check that out. But if no one has any questions.
I got a question. I talked to Philippe one time about deer.
Yeah.
He said that they had electric fence around. He said what you have to do is in the spring, when the fawns are there, just have it shut off, go out there, put peanut butter on the line, turn it back on. Then they'll come and lick on the peanut butter.
Right.
And then they won't come back.
We still do that. We try to kind of train them that there's that fence there, but I guess I didn't realize deer can jump like almost 11 feet in the air, so they'll hop. I watch them just hop over it, but what can you do? They're the worst. The problem is they damage the baby vines the worst. The ones that we're trying to grow up, they seem to really like eating those. So, but all right. Well, then you guys can follow me upstairs. Thanks for taking the tour.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Waiting a couple minutes for see if any other people join us, and then we'll start walking. Do you guys have wristbands already? Did you check in at the ring? All right, thank you. So did you all do the winery tour already?
Yeah.
Yeah? Wow. What'd you learn today?
That you have a lot of storage for a lot of wine, a lot of Prairie Fumé.
That I plan on pairing shellfish with Prairie Fumé.
Friday night fish fry.
I think it would be great with crab legs.
Yes, especially that.
It is pretty complicated. Well, it's both easy and complicated. You know, nature will do it, but as winemakers, we guide it.
Well, to get the wine you want.
Yeah. Hello. How are you two today? We're just waiting probably one more minute.
Big group. Did you have one at 10 o'clock?
We did. We've had groups every 10 minutes or so. People that minutes. Hello. Hi. You can come on up. Do you have wristbands already?
Oh, no, where do we do
Nope,
that?
that's fine. Come on up here. Excuse me, I'm going to sneak behind you.
Walking around.
Yeah.
Everybody going?
I don't know what he got, but it does look easy.
He grabbed a bottle to go.
Right. So Nicholas is going to guide you.
Hi, Nicholas.
Thank you.
Hi.
Wave at everybody. You'll just start following him down into the tanks, please. And if anyone was interested in the cooking demo, it starts in just 2 minutes upstairs. Where is that?
Come back to this after.
Yeah, you can come back and do the tour if you're interested. It's up in the vineyard room. So you would go up to the winery store and they would send you right up there if you wanted to do that. All right.
Great. You guys want to follow me? Alright, excellent. Well, welcome to the open house. I'm Nicholas. I do everything here, most of what I'm told to do. Work a lot of production, work in the summer in the vineyard, so that's helping winemaking. Really back. Excellent. Great. Filter back in here. Be a little bit quieter. So, did most people go on the winery tour already? Alright, so, excellent. So you guys already heard a lot about the history, but we'll still review that for those who haven't. So, the winery was founded in 1850s. Augustin Herazzi came over, he was a count from Austria. He planted the first vines here. Those weren't quite hardy enough for the Wisconsin winters. As you guys know this year, we've had really cold winters. So those didn't last too long, and then this kind of right-hand man, Peter Kale, took over and built the old building that we see here, the old vintage winery that's up there, along with the house, kind of the cave on the hillside there, and planted more vines that were hardy enough for Wisconsin winters. And then the rest of the winery kind of got shut down with Prohibition and just kind of turned back into a farm. And then in 1972, Bob and Joanne Wollersheim moved in, bought the property, and replanted vines and started the winery again. And then in 1984, Philippe Cocard, the current winemaker here and owner, he came over from France as part of an agriculture exchange program and helped out Bob and Joanne kind of get things started more so, and kind of brought his French winemaking knowledge, and eventually married their oldest daughter, and here we are. So, something that Philippe and Bob really wanted to do is they always talked about distilling cognac,
and they weren't allowed to because of state law in Wisconsin. You couldn't have a winery and a distillery at the same time. So, but that law changed in 2009 with a lot of kind of persuading by us and a couple other wineries in Wisconsin, and so got that law changed. So then the distillery kind of was born, or reborn, we like to say, because back in, what's the date on there? 1876, actually, there was brandy being distilled here back when the Kales owned it. And then that, again, got shut down with Prohibition along with the rest of the winery. So we like to say that it's been reborn here and kind of try to take that tradition up with us. So you guys want to follow me back in here? You guys see the white, there's about 3 inches of foam on all these tanks. It's helped cool them, keeps the white wine. In this room is only distilled white wine, or not distilled. We make white wine here, and so that keeps the tanks cool at a consistent temperature and helps them settle more. And you also see these are also cooling jackets to help just control the temperature of the wine. If you have any questions, let me know. If I'm not speaking loud enough, let me know. Yes?
When you age the wine in here, do you have to fill it all the way to the top?
No, you don't have to. But for space storage, we tend to do that. Also, yeah.
So it doesn't oxidize if it's in the tank and it happens to be only half full?
We try to control the temperature a decent amount. Because of the fermentation of the yeast, it produces enough CO2 that kind of like pushes out all the oxygen. So if it's only half full, that theoretically that top half of the tank will be filled with mostly CO2. So there won't be too much oxygen left in there. It'll all be used up in the process of fermentation. Here we have about 30 acres of vineyards. We also buy a lot from other local growers for us. Everything that we make is fermented and produced and bottled here. So that's semi-unique to us. Other wineries will buy either pre-made things, but we make everything and bottle it here. Because of Wisconsin's climate, unfortunately, we can't grow everything we would like to here. So we do get shipped some grapes and grape juice from New York State that's specially contracted to us, and we have a good relationship with those growers that work well with us. So. So we're going to keep on moving through here, and we'll kind of get into some more filtration and more brandy stuff. Distillery. Great, you guys are the biggest tour we've had today, so I'm excited. This is also my only tour of the day, so you guys get my best tour possible. If you guys look over here, these will see what we use to filter some of the wine. So this is kind of newer, high-tech piece of equipment. There's tons of tiny little tubes in there. They're not quite microscopic, but almost. And so those kind of, all the wine will be able to filter through those, and all the kind of particles will get stuck in there. It kind of cleans itself, and so wine can come through and be filtered in one pass. This is an older piece of equipment that we still use for certain wines and some of our spirits. It's called a plate filter, and so then there'll be, it's more like a really big coffee filter. Think of like that, and we'll have a pump that kind of pushes or pulls things through certain filters depending on how many we want, how long it takes, and how clean we need things to be. So, and we're kind of going over a lot of the wine making stuff again if you haven't heard it, because that's important for distillation. We use our winemaking knowledge and our winemaking expertise to make sure we can produce the best spirits possible, especially with the brandies, because brandy is distilled wine. So it's not, you wouldn't want to drink the wine. We usually pick the grapes early, and so they're high high acidity, and so it just makes for a better brandy. Keeps things fresher. So follow me back to this room. Okay. Anyone have any questions so far? Excellent. So these tanks are here. All of our tanks are made locally in Sauk City, so just across the river from us. About batch fabrication. These are the biggest tanks we have, 7,000 gallons. So it's where we store all the wine or the spirits while we are waiting for them to be bottled. So after the tour, or at the tour, you guys can go downstairs and check out the bottling machine. It's pretty cool. It's a really cool piece of equipment. It's a lot of cool engineering that's into it. So before we get to the most exciting part, we're going to take some of our brandy, talk about barrel aging. So all of our spirits are aged in oak barrels, white oak. Yes, Tom? Yes. He's the master distiller right there, so. Yeah, so if you got any questions that I have no idea about, you can ask him. So he knows what he's talking about. So we toast our barrels. We don't toast them, we send them to Cooper, person who makes barrels, and they'll toast them. So they'll like a toaster. So it's like toast it a little bit, gives it some extra flavor, brings out some of the caramel and vanilla flavors oak that are already in the oak. And then for our bourbon, we char them. And so it's like extra toasted. So it's like you put a toast and like turn it all the way.
So char barrel is a top fire. So that's like your fast hot sear when you cook a steak or a burger on a gas grill or a charcoal grill. The toast is more like low and slow, kind of when you're smoking a rack of ribs. It takes about 30 to 60 minutes to toast the barrel. It takes about 30 to 45 seconds to char.
Have you ever considered doing the char process here?
Could you? Theoretically, we could char barrels. We're a big believer in what we're good at, and our coopers are very good at building barrels. It's actually surprisingly difficult to make a bunch of wood boards hold liquid. And so there are a handful of small people making barrels in their distilleries, but it's a very slow process. There's one place in Oregon who built a dedicated workshop just to make barrels, and they have a guy that's his full-time job. He made 60 barrels the first year that he was making barrels. That's how, just because he was teaching himself how to make barrels. He's doing a little over one a week. The companies we work with, Brandy and Cycle World, those are all hand-built in Napa Valley. During the slow time of year, they'll build 60 a day, and during the busy season, they'll build up to 90 a day. We also work with a company called Independent Stave out of Kentucky. They're in Lebanon, Kentucky. They actually have another cooperage in Lebanon, Missouri. At those cooperages, they have multiple lines in each facility. Their smallest line is 2,400 barrels. And so there's obviously the economies of scale, but there's also the specialization. And just like everything we do, we put so much attention to detail at how hot things are, what temperature we're using, what's our alcohol content, all that through our distillation process. Where in the winemaking, it's all about the gravity and the pH and the quality of that fruit. They do that for their wood. They know exactly this grain density in the stave is going to result in a tight grain barrel, which is good for this style of wine, versus this grain density is good for different barrels. So it's a whole other skill set that you have to really know a lot about.
That's why we
make them.
Why you rely on the experts to go ahead and do that, because
Exactly.
they know what they're doing.
Exactly.
Okay.
We do have a stand for our press house brand up there that you guys can head on up and grab. All the full barrels on the floor here are actually press house brand. We have a few more press house barrels downstairs as well, but if you guys after the tour, you're welcome to go down and look at
bottles do you bottle in a year? How many bottles of the brandy do you bottle in a year?
Last year we bottled about 10,000 bottles of press out. Just the press out.
Do you age the coconut?
Yep, we age everything here.
It's a good burn.
Press brandy is kind of engineered or designed to make brandy old fashions. Kind of with our Wisconsin heritage, we drink a lot of brandy old fashions. So, and then we also have the catered brandy is made with all Wisconsin products, Wisconsin oak. We season the staves here before we ship them out to California for them to be made. So we have some piles out back, and just some wood staves that are seasoning, kind of picking up the natural Wisconsin environments first before we ship them out there. So that's the catered brandy. So that's the little bit finer sipping brandy. Then after we're done with the barrels, we'll use them for experimental things, or sometimes we make furniture out of them. So you can see some of that in the winery gift shop.
We sell, a lot of people ask what we do with like the whiskey barrels. All of our whiskey barrels by law we can only use once for bourbon or rye whiskey, and so we actually sell all of those. They're in pretty high demand for breweries. So like right now, our latest bottling in December, we sold 6 of those 8 barrels to brewery, Great Dane in Madison. They're aging a Russian Imperial Stout that they'll be releasing in April, which I'm really excited about because it's my favorite style.
So do you get like heads up on
Yeah,
that?
we have a craft beer week event, and they're actually going to be featuring that beer with our rye whiskey, so you can do like a shot and a beer with. So it's something I like a lot, so I'll be there. You guys are welcome to join us. We'll be posting about it on our social media as we get closer. But then also my buddy in town, we actually bowl together. I'm a terrible bowler, but we bowl together. And he runs John Joseph Coffee here in town, and he roasts his own beans. And so he actually ages the green beans in the used rye barrel to pull out the whiskey flavor, and then he roasts those beans lightly. But it cooks out all the alcohol. But when you're drinking it, it kind of tastes like you're drinking an Irish coffee. It's very tasty as well.
Which place is that?
John Joseph Coffee. He's got a little shop here in town. We actually do have his coffee. My friend Paul Hermes, the distiller there. Great guy. You guys are welcome. Come on in, spread out as best you can. It's got a big group here today.
How long have you been doing this?
I've been here since August of 2014. Nicholas is my brother-in-law. I don't know, did he introduce himself?
Yeah, we said Nicholas.
This is Nicholas. So Nicholas's dad and mom are Philippe and Julie, our owners. And so Philippe is actually doing the next tour. And my wife Celine might have checked you guys in. So it's very much a family operation. So yeah. So this is our grain fermentation room. Unlike the tanks you saw in the other room, which were very large, you can see that while these tanks are large, they are an order of magnitude smaller. These are about 1,500 gallon tanks versus about 5,800 or 5,400 gallon tanks in the other room. The reason for that is because with our whiskey, we make that from grain, and we can store that grain in like the silo outside, and we can mill it and cook it to order, basically. When we make our brandy or we make our wine, that fruit is, it's got sugar in it, and it's got water in it, and it's ready to go. It's very ripe. If you buy grapes, you can't hold grapes in your refrigerator for 6 months. It's not going to work. So we have to make all that wine during harvest, and that's why we have so much tank capacity, because we have to make all the wine we're going to sell for the year, and all the wine we're going to distill that year in about a 2-month period. In here, we'll weigh out about 1,000 pounds of grain, and we'll cook it into about 500 gallons worth of whiskey mash. 2.5, I call it 2.5 times a week, basically every other day. So we do Monday, Wednesday, Friday 1 week, and then Tuesday, Thursday the week after. And each one of those cooks will fill about 153-gallon whiskey barrel. And so if you guys want to take turns stepping up, be careful on that stool there. You can actually see 2 of our active fermentations going. But yeah, we'll be cooking and fermenting basically every week for the distillation the next week. The 3 little tanks down on the side there are our wine holding tanks. And so we'll make 40 to 50,000 gallons of wine during harvest for distillation. And we'll bring it over about 4,500 gallons at a time. So those 3 tanks hold 1,500 gallons, and then that big white tank in the hall holds another 3,000 gallons. And so we'll fill the stills from that. We go through about 500 gallons of wine that's 2.5 days of distilling. Any questions on the cook process or on fermentation? The mash down there is a white corn bourbon mash. So it's about 75% white corn, 10% rye, and 15% malt barley. We work with Phil Marks, about Madison, one friend of ours, who wants to grow the white corn and the rye, so we use one of us. And malt barley we use because malted barley has which is great at the start of the harvest. We work with and they work with various growers of the state to get the Wisconsin grown barley that they want. Yes. As much as possible. Even our yeast should be water. All right, we'll head down into the still house. These are the grains that we use. So if you've done our winery tour already, you went through our press room where they had the crusher, the destemmer, and the press. This still, actually, after wine harvest, that equipment would get put away and this still would get set up in that room. That was our first distillery back in 2010. We had what they called an alternating premise license. So we could either make spirits or we could make wine in the space, but the federal government does not allow you to do both at the same time. You can only do one or the other. So that's why these spaces here are all dedicated to distilling, so we can make all the spirits while they're making the wine over the winery building. We started in 2010 making our Pocard Brandy, which was all Wisconsin native grapes, aged in Wisconsin oak barrels. We put about 100 gallons of wine in this still every day, and we bring it to a boil. The way we heat these stills now is with a copper coil that runs through there, and steam goes into that copper coil. As that steam gives up its heat, it becomes liquid again, and then that process is what actually heats the wine. It takes about an hour, hour and a half to warm up. As it's warming up, the boiling point will climb. Lower boiling point compounds will come across first. You'll get a lot of solvency type things like acetone, which is like nail polish remover, very undesirable. That we call the heads. We collect that. It's a very small amount of alcohol, but we collect that and we discard that. That does not make its way to the finished product. After the still is warmed up and it's going, you get past those heads, you start to get a really awesome flavor and a very high concentration of alcohol. For us, we're at about 75 to 78% alcohol to start. When that beginning of that head start, or heart start, up from the 10% alcohol we had in the wine. So as that alcohol content is coming across, most of the alcohol is coming across, you're leaving behind the water content in that wine. And as a result, the boiling point climbs. As boiling point climbs, you get more and more heavier flavor compounds coming across. They're kind of sweaty, fatty, undesirable again. These are called tails compounds. So when the proof gets down about 120 proof, we keep a very close eye on it, start to get a lot of those flavor compounds, and when it doesn't taste right anymore, we'll switch it over and start collecting our tails. We'll collect the tails, we'll collect about 12 to 15 gallons of hearts, which is going to be about 140 proof. That's the good stuff, that's what goes in the barrels. And then we'll collect about another 15 gallons of tails, which will only be 70 to 80 proof. And those tails will get added to the wine the next day. So the basics of distilling is you warm it up, and if you guys have cooked with wine, you know that the alcohol goes away. That's sad. So all this apparatus is designed to capture that alcohol vapor and concentrate it back down. So that the steam will come across, and you can see in here a copper coil. The product travels through that copper coil, and then there's cold water surrounding it, which causes that vapor to go back down. This still here is made in Louisville, Kentucky. We like to use local as much as possible, as you guys heard with the grains. Louisville's not local, but it's practically closer than certain parts of the state. And so they are pretty much the only American still manufacturer. They've been making stills in Louisville since 1914, and it's a third or fourth generation family business. They make all the stills for guys like Jack Daniels or Jim Beam or those types of companies. So this is a very, very, very small still for them. We put about 250 gallons of whiskey mash in each day on this still, and it's the same process again. This still, you can see the brawn mixer on the back. If you look inside, you'll see it looks kind of like a boat motor. Stirs the mash. It prevents that grain from cooking onto the bottom of the still. That alcohol vapor rises up, and we have a couple of options. We can send it first through this botanical basket, the staging account in there. That's how we make our gin. So we'll distill the alcohol through bay or juniper, lemongrass, lavender to get those flavors down. Or we can send it to the column, and in that column, in between each window is a plate. And on each plate, it looks like 5 little mushrooms. They're called bubble caps. So the alcohol vapor has to go through those bubble caps up each plate. As you go up more and more plates, the alcohol content will get cleaner. It will get higher in content, more neutral in taste. When we run all 6 plates, we get about 170 proof. In order to hit vodka strength, we need to hit 190 proof. And so you think, oh, well, you're almost there. You only need 1 or 2 more plates and you'll hit 190. You get diminishing returns. So every time you take a step, you take half as far each step you go, and you never quite get to pure alcohol. And so in order to make vodka, we'd actually need twice as much column. We need about 14 plates in order to get up to that 191 proof for vodka. The last guy on the right is our condenser. It's called a shotgun condenser, unlike these two, which a lot of people call worm tubs because it looks like a snake or a worm going through. The shotgun condenser is called a shotgun condenser because if you looked at it through the round side, it looks like somebody shot a shotgun through it. It's just a bunch of pipes where the vapor hits the outside of those pipes and cool water comes through those side pipes. Most important part of the still is the parrot on the front here. That's where the alcohol comes out. That's where we do all of our tasting. As you can see, we don't have any computers in this room. There's no automated valves in this room. Everything is operated 100% manually by myself or Nick. And we do everything by taste. And so all of our decisions are made that way. Any questions on distilling or anything else I might have forgotten to mention? No? All right.
Yeah, one question.
Yeah.
How do you know when you get the test? I kind of watched that
Moonshiners.
And how do they know when they get past that undesirable stuff that comes off?
We call it sensory, which is a big fancy word for you to smell it and taste it. That's usually the best way. Some guys do it based off time. Some guys weigh it based off proof. They know you know, my proof curve looks like this, and at that point, we're going to do it there. We do it all by taste. So we smell it, we taste it, and you could, I mean, you pick that thing up right as the still warms up, the very first glass you get off, it smells like pure nail polish. I mean, it's just very, very terrible. Where you place that cut, because you're talking about very, very small concentrations. Even in that first glass, you're talking about parts per million concentration. You're not talking about like 10% acetone. It's, you know, 0.1% acetone in there. But because it's so such a pungent chemical, it just overpowers. And so the art of distilling is where you place those cuts. So if I'm trying to make a very neutral spirit, or I'm trying to make a whiskey that I'm only going to age for a very short period of time, I'm going to be more conservative with my cuts, and I'm going to wait longer. I'm going to take a very large heads cut to get a very nice, clean hearts component. If I'm making like a single malt Scotch style whiskey, I might take a very short heads cut because I know it's going to sit in a barrel for 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 years. And a little bit of that compound in the overall mix when it goes into the barrel is barely detectable. And over time, it might add some good flavor as it reacts with the wood, reacts with the air, it develops and matures. And so a lot of people are scared of heads. They're not good. You don't want to drink a cup of heads, but it's not going to kill you. Like methanol is a compound that a lot of people worry about when it comes to distilling. Methanol and ethanol have almost the exact same boiling point. The difference between methanol and ethanol is you can't smell or taste methanol. And so it's very dangerous. But the solution to methanol poisoning, does anybody know? If you drink an ink toner, your kid drinks an ink toner, you take them to the hospital, you know what they do? They hook them up on an IV of ETOH or ethanol. Basically, they hook you up to vodka, and they put vodka in your bloodstream because your body prefers to metabolize ethanol over methanol. So any methanol that comes through in a properly produced spirit, your body's just going to reject it, and because there's 40% of the product is ethanol, or more. But a lot of when it comes to like moonshiners, if you make a still improperly, you're using lead-based solder or certain types of plastics that are not appropriate for still construction. Those heads compounds will just eat it up, and they'll put it in your spirit, and that's how you get poison. That's why we work with reputable still manufacturers. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to take you guys down to our bottling line. So you can check out our bottling line. We have some interactive displays down there and the rest of our 500 and some barrels. And then after that, you guys are welcome to take your time down there. After that, you can come back up. We do have some tastings in this room of our apple brandy, rye whiskey, and vermouth. And then we also have 3 featured cocktails. One actually made with the Prairie Fumé, the 30th anniversary of Prairie Fumé, Brandy Old Fashioned, and the Rapper, which is a grapefruit and rye cocktail. We'll head out this back door here. The steam valve on?
No, the tank valve.
Oh yeah, we're pretty careful about that.
How long do you have to go to school to do this, or it's just?
About 6 weeks.
But that one lost you. You did it back way. You did.
I'll do that right now. basically the flow of it is the bottles will get placed on the conveyor. They'll make their way through to the first station where they get rinsed. Just before filling with wine or spirit, they would get sparged with inert gas, so there's no oxygen in the headspace of the bottle. So they get filled, and then they either get corked, screw capped, or a bar top for our spirits. Once that's done, it'll make its way through to get either a tin capsule, a PVC capsule that would be heat shrunk on, and a label here. So the last station is 2 people, quality control, checking everything is there. And send it through the tape machine and get it packed up on the pallets and over to the warehouse. So in an hour, we'll do roughly 3,000 bottles. So in a full day, that equates to over 20,000 bottles. So I'll get this thing running and send a few bottles through.
But chemical engineering, by and large, for what we do on the day-to-day basis, is not super practical because there's so much of what I do that I do literally everything. if I worked at Jim Beam, I would just be looking at one process. I would just be in charge of the engineering aspect of it. And so my wife, who registered a lot of you with Celine, she has a master's in food science. So she's like our scientist. And we all have that scientific inclination, but like I'm not a culinary trained scientist. But I do have my certificate in distilling, which is an examination, basically to show that you met qualifications. When I took my certificate in distilling, they did not offer at the time a master distillers program. Now they do. For me to go from my certificate to a master's now, I would have to do 3 years of diploma study. I have to do a test every year for 3 years. And then I can start my master's.
Okay, so it's not 7 days a week.
Oh, no, not at all.
Freeze fortify, like for instance, on those 40 below, I took 20 gallons of
No, we don't do that. It's not.
Oh, labelers on the other side.
A lot of people do bagels osmosis, bagels osmosis, okay. Freeze fortify. It's not used a lot now. They own it.
Great day for water.
upstairs above the winery store in the winery. Tom will share his insight on the distilling process. Please make your way to the vineyard room at this time. The distiller talk starts at 2 o'clock. We'll see you there.
I was discussing with one of our tour guides at the distillery what is one of the most common questions he gets on the tour. So that's I built my whole presentation based off one question. And it's a question he asks every group. I never thought of it because to me it seems like very basic. But he likes to start his tours by asking people if they know the difference between brandy and whiskey. I'm not going to require you to raise your hand, and there's not going to be a quiz. But it's a great way he likes to start the tour, just to kind of get understanding of what people already know. And a lot of people don't know the difference. Hopefully some of this is interesting to you guys. But basically I wanted to go over brandy and whiskey specifically, and how we make them, how the processes are similar, what we've learned from the brandy making process, and how we apply that for whiskey, and vice versa. It's a real small group in here, super informal, so at any point you guys have questions, a firm question about absinthe. It's not in the presentation, so just raise your hand and let me know. So the basics, to sum it up, most basically, brandy is made from fruit and aged in barrels, typically aged in barrels, and whiskey is made from grains and aged in barrels. So one more step beyond that, brandy is a distilled wine, whereas whiskey is a distilled beer. Not necessarily a wine or a beer that you would take home and drink out of your fridge, but that's kind of the philosophy behind it. So when we're making brandy, we're starting in the winery. Typically, if you're just say brandy, that's going to be a grape brandy. So unless it's qualified as like an apple brandy, it's typically made from a grape wine. Apple brandy is probably the second most popular style as far as sheer volumes made, but you can really make brandy from any fruit. A couple of years ago, I was at a distillery in France, and it was a historic museum on the history of distilling in France, and they made about 27 different brandies from 27 different fruits. So they had like Mirabelle plums as well as regular plums, and apricots and peaches, pears and cherries. Anything you can, any fruit you could turn into a brandy. Typically, a lot of the more expensive fruits are the fruits with lower sugar, like pears. When we made our pear revie, we only get about 5% alcohol out of that. So it's a very expensive brandy to make because we need about 12 or 13 pounds of pears to fill that little bottle that we were selling. And so as a result, a lot of those brandies are not aged because you just want that crisp fruit character. With the grape brandies and the apple brandies, they're pretty intense, especially the grape brandies have a lot of intense flavor off the still, and so that's why we choose to age them. That softens that flavor. Flip it over to the whiskey world. So we're distilling from grains. Here in America, we grow a lot of corn. We've always grown a lot of corn. It's native to this half, to the New World, to this half of the world. And so primarily we make bourbon in this country. The elephant in the room is Tennessee whiskey, which is pretty much bourbon, but it's made by 2 distilleries in Tennessee. And those whiskeys have to be at least 51% corn, but the rest can be a mix of any other grain. We primarily use rye or wheat and then malt barley. Go ahead.
Do you know what variety of corn you're using, or do you use several varieties of corn?
That's a great question. The question was, do I know what variety of corn I'm using? So the big distilleries, when you ask them what kind of corn they use to make their whiskey, they say yellow number 2 dent. Yellow number 2 dent is not a variety of corn. It's not a species. It's a quality. So number 2 dent has to be 54 pounds per bushel, has to meet a certain purity thing, but it's any yellow corn that meets that spec. It's also, that's like the most widely available corn. We grow that for animal feed, and we grow it for our ethanol plants to make the ethanol that drives our cars. We use it in our neutral alcohol for our vodkas and our liqueurs and our gins as well. For us, we really wanted to take that winemaker's approach to the grains. And so we work very closely with our farmers. The yellow corn we don't have as much control over because that is each year, just the way yellow corn is grown, they try different varieties. They use those varieties for a few years and then kind kind of switch. With the white corn that we use in our bourbon, that'll be coming out in December. If you did the tour, you saw the white corn coming through the mash. It's a Pioneer food grade hybrid. They grow it for corn chips. Tastes delicious. It makes a really great bourbon. Our farmer loves it. He gets a very good yield out of this field. And it's a very dense corn. You get 62 pounds per bushel versus that standard 54, 56 pounds. And so as a result, we have a more efficient process and a really nice flavor. Rye, we actually experimented with the standard conventional rye, Hazlitt rye, Versetto rye, and Danko rye. Danko is actually an heirloom variety of rye. And in the past, we experimented with Trucker's Favorite 50, which was a white corn heirloom variety. Silver King, which was a white corn heirloom variety. Bloody Butcher's Corn, which is a very rich red corn. And Hopi Blue, which is a very common use for blue corn chips. And so those were different varieties we've experimented with. And our fundraiser whiskey that is coming out in May is actually made from those varieties.
Those heirlooms.
The heirloom varieties, yep.
So it's all heirloom.
Yep. Yeah.
Excellent.
It's pretty exciting.
Good.
So we're also doing 3 single varieties as well. So you'll be able to taste that Bloody Butcher's Corn. It's 85% Bloody Butcher's Corn, the rest is wheat and malt barley, aged in white port barrel. And then we did the same thing with the Hopi Blue. And it's just, for us, like winemakers, on the Brandy side, we really care what varieties we're using. And we group our tanks of wine by varietal and try to keep them in lots so we can grade that quality of the wine. And then we can trace that through the brandy making process. And we're taking that approach to grain as well. And that's something that's very unique to us. To touch base on American whiskey again, at least 51% of its constituent grain or primary grain is required. So for bourbon, it has to be 51% corn. Rye whiskey or wheat whiskey would have to be 51% rye or 50% wheat. But you can paint with whatever other grains you want in that remaining 49%. The big thing for American whiskey is new charcoal. So for bourbon and rye whiskey, by law, we have to use a brand new barrel. Scotch whiskey and Irish whiskey and the Canadians, they have looser regulations. They use a lot of used barrels in that regard, but they also have tighter regulations. So for like a Scotch single malt, it would have to be 100% malted barley. So there's a lot of different varieties of whiskey. People ask all the time, what's the difference between bourbon and whiskey or Scotch and bourbon? All those, Scotch and bourbon and Irish whiskey are all whiskeys. Those rules for each of those products are based per region. Any other questions on that? Check my notes, make sure I didn't miss anything. So the basics with brandy, fruit already has sugar in it. You bite into it, it's nice and sweet and juicy. So those sugars are accessible. And we know those sugars are accessible because you buy a bunch of grapes and you leave them on your counter for a couple of weeks, they'll start to break down and you don't want to eat them after they've been sitting there for a while. Unlike grain, it's very dry. It's very starchy. You wouldn't just eat, very few people anyway, will just eat a handful of grain. If you see somebody do that, they probably work in a brewery distillery. But so as a result, we can store the grains for whiskey production for a year. There's actually, I found out from a maltster at a distilling conference that the malt, one of the major maltsters based out of Canada sells, is a blend of 2016 Copeland and 2017 Pinnacle barley. Because they're very slowly stretching. So they know already 3 years down the road, 2 years down the road, what the harvest looks like. And they're trying to consistently blend that because it's a lot of that malt is going to the big breweries or the very large distilleries, and they want a very consistent product profile over several years. For us, we try to follow the harvests. So when our friend Phil harvests his white corn, we bring that in. He harvests it in October, November. We bring it in December, and we start distilling in January. We follow his schedule. In July, when he harvests the rye, we bring in the fresh batch of rye. We make rye whiskey for August through December. Try to embrace each vintage, very similar to it. The big difference, though, is with the brandy, since that fruit is ready to go, we basically just juice it. We press it, squeeze out the juice, and we add our yeast, and the yeast is ready to go. The whiskey requires a little bit more work. We have to cook it, but before we cook it, we have to mill it into like a fine flour, kind of like a cornmeal. And then that cook process will take about 3 to 4 hours. And what we're basically trying to do is liquefy the grain, gelatinize the starches, and add some malt barley, which will break down those starches into simple sugar. From there, now we're ready to add some yeast. That fermentation process, for both of those, we take a very slow, cold fermentation. The guys in Kentucky will ferment their whiskey mashes in about 36 to 48 hours, and they'll ferment about 88, 90 degrees. We like to ferment in about 72 to 76 degrees. So trying to take that approach with the winemaking side, that slow fermentation, that cool fermentation is going to create some good flavors, give you a nice healthy fermentation, and you get some really great results that way. Any questions on any of this? So here we are in the winery. So winery to a distillery. It's a natural extension. Winemaking is the first step to make brandy. So you have to make wine before you can make brandy. A lot of people think, oh, it's a great way for you to get rid of your wine that doesn't sell or it turned out bad or whatever reason. That's a very common belief. It's what the guys in California do. That's why you can buy a handle of brandy for $3 cheaper than a bottle of Tito's, even though Tito's is made from corn, which goes for $100 a ton versus the grapes go for $1,500 to $2,000 a ton in California. Because the guys in California, they'll distill much higher than we do. They'll create a very neutral brandy, and then they age in whatever barrels they have lying around, and actually, by law in America, you can use up to 2.5% flavoring in your brandy. And so a lot of those guys just kind of have a house flavor that they'll add to make those batches consistent, and they'll use whatever grapes are available. Distillation is all about concentration and separation. So if you start with garbage, you get concentrated garbage out. There's ways to treat for that, but we're big believers in just making wine for each brand. Again, most of the large distilleries will focus on efficiency. They focus on the yield. They're looking at the economics of it. And for us, at the scale we operate, we know we'll never be able to make a $9.99 bottle of bourbon, and we're not going to try. So as a result, we're focusing on spending a little bit extra on all of our ingredients to make every batch the best we can. So our focus is on that quality, the product quality first.
When you say that you make the wine for the brandy,
Correct.
what kind of wine would it be similar to?
So the story I like to tell is the story of the lacrosse and St. Pepin.
Okay.
St. Pepin is what we use in our Eagle White. That's what we use in our ice wine. And we also use that grape for our vermouth and most importantly for coconut. So what that grape becomes, a lot of that has to do when we pick. So we pick the brandy grapes earlier than we'll pick the Eagle White grapes because it's going to be higher in acidity and lower in sugar. Again, if it's higher in sugar, it's going to be more cost effective for me to make brandy. The more sugar, the more alcohol concentration in my wine, the less natural gas I need to use to heat my still. And the less fruit I need to buy. If there's more sugar in that fruit, the less fruit I need to buy in order to do it. So a lot of the big California brands, they're going to use very overripe fruit, very low in acidity. For us, we chose to make a wine very high in acidity, low in alcohol. It's not unpleasant, but it's not a wine you'd want to sit down and drink a bottle of over dinner. It's a very acidic, low alcohol wine, about 9% versus 10, 11, 12% that you'd see in a table wine. But that acid is very important because it's going to protect the wine through storage because we're not going to add any sulfites. Again, distillation is about concentration, so any sulfites in the wine will be concentrated in the aroma of the brandy, and it becomes very hard to even breathe around a distilled wine that's been has added solvents. The guys in California get around with it by adding a bunch of hydrogen peroxide to oxidize out the sulfites. Exactly. Your reaction is perfect. But it's a great way. You can take wine, you can take Chardonnay that they didn't sell for 3 years. You can strip out a bunch of the sulfites and then run it through the still and make a pretty neutral brandy, and then age it and put it in your blend. So, yeah, go ahead.
What variety of grape do you use for the Coquillard brandy?
The Coquillard's mostly St. Pepin and Lacrosse.
Both of them?
Both of them, yep.
How many acres of those grapes do you have here locally?
We have about 7. Bernie, how many do you have? 2. So we get some from Bernie here. He's real close by too. We work with about 6 or 7 main growers for the brandy grapes here in Wisconsin. Most of it's Lacrosse and St. Pepin. We are also making Wisconsin brandy that hasn't made its way into Coquillard brandy yet from Frontenac and La Crescent as well. And then for the press house brandy, we're using an American native blend, like the types of grapes that are grown here on the property pre-prohibition. And we get those grapes sourced as a juice from upstate New York. And it's mostly a blend of Catawba and Delaware. Let's see what else. I got notes here.
I forgot my second question related to that.
Sorry.
I'll try to remember later.
Oh, the acid. So I mentioned the acid for protecting the wines because of the sulfites. The acid's also important because as the still warms up, those acids will react with the heat and they'll create a lot of esters and aromas as well. So they're very important for flavor. Yeah. So barrel aging. Traditional European brandies, like the French cognac and stuff, they by law have to age in French oak. So typically the French cognac distilleries will have a brand new barrel that they'll use many, many times. But it's all barrels made for the cognac. American whiskey is very similar. By law, we have to use a new charred oak barrel, and so that's a barrel made for the bourbon. I touched base on the American brandy, Corbel. Anybody heard of such a small brand? Corbel is owned by, works in partnership with Brown Forman, who happens to own Jack Daniels. So Jack Daniels, by law, can only use their barrels once. So most of the barrels that Corbel uses are actually ex-Jack Daniel barrels because they need to get rid of them. So we didn't want to play that game. We have wine barrels. Now we have whiskey barrels. We're not using those for the brandy. We're taking that European approach and the American whiskey approach, barrels specifically made for the products. And so we have, like in the case of our Coquillard brandy, our custom Philippe toast that we developed by trying about 5 or 6 different traditional cognac toasts on Wisconsin oak to see which brought out the best characteristics of Wisconsin oak. We picked our 2 favorites in our Cooper Madison custom toast to match those 2 profiles. On the whiskey, we experimented a lot of different chars. We're also experimenting with toasting before charring. And so we've settled on a toasted barrel that they toast very slowly for about a half an hour. And then they do a medium char 3, on the barrel afterwards. That's going to develop more layer for the spirit to interact, a lot more flavors, and get you more depth of flavor versus just the char.
For the whiskey, you do the bourbon barrel with a different size than the wine barrel?
Correct, yeah.
So it looks big downstairs for the wine, but like 60 gallons or something?
Yeah.
And the bourbon is like 55?
Correct, yeah. So the question was, do we use different size barrels? A lot of small distilleries, young distilleries, will use very small barrels, 10, 15-gallon barrels. We use the traditional American barrel size that everybody's been using since the 60s, which is a 53-gallon new charred oak barrel. And then for our brandies and our whiskeys. For our brandies and our wines, we use 60-gallon barrels. We do have, if you guys did the distillery tour, you saw the big wall, 5-pie barrels. Those were 70-gallon barrels. That's closer to the French size traditionally used in cognac. So we did originally use those for press house, but we're transitioning to the 60s more just from the consistency standpoint. Operating with 60s for brandy and 50s for
Do you use a different grape to distill the cognac?
The Cocard brandy is our cognac. It's our Wisconsin cognac style. That's the Lacrosse and St. Pepin grapes.
Is there a different, I mean...
So cognac is a protected
when I
term.
think- Yes. Cognac is different how from brandy?
So I didn't touch on that, but shame on me. Bourbon is a type of whiskey. Cognac is a type of brandy, similar to how bourbon is a type of whiskey. So bourbon is regulated by American law. It's an American style whiskey. Cognac is regulated by the French government. And it's a region in France. And they have a very long rule book and all the rules you need to follow. And here in America, the definition for brandy is distilled from grape wine and aged in a barrel for 2 years. That's the entire rule. So you can do, there's a lot of exceptions like that, 2.5% flavor and things like that.
Be careful where you're getting your cognac from, because
Right.
you don't know what you're getting.
Well, the cognac is a very thick rule book, and that's to protect the brand of cognac. That's in France. The American brandy definition is the one I just told you, which is that one line, basically.
That's why you have a variety of flavors.
That's why we can make so many different things. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because every brand of cognac I've ever had they're all very different.
Yeah. So in cognac, there's about 6 or 7 different regions, and so if you buy like a Grand Champagne or a Petite Champagne, it's all different regions, and each region's going to also have its own set of rules. And then you have BS, VSOP, and XO, and those are different rules for ages on all of those as well. The art of cognac, by law, I think it's 90 to 95% Uni Blanc is the variety of grapes that they have. And then they have a list of the other, like 6 or 7 other grapes they can use to make up the rest of that. Here in America, we don't have anything that controlling, so that's why we can play around with things like Lacrosse and St. Pepin in one blend, La Crescent in another blend, and the Catawba Delaware blend in another blend. Any other questions? Let's see. Yeah.
Why, I know obviously society has a lot of rules and laws, but why can you only use whiskey barrel one time?
Why does America require a new charcoal barrel? So right now, for the first time since the early 60s, the federal government is looking at updating these rules. And so they don't change the rules very often. When those rules were written after Prohibition to define what bourbon was, there are very few, there's 5 operating distilleries during Prohibition. 5 people had medicinal whiskey licenses because you could go down to Walgreens and buy, if you got a prescription, you could get 1 pint of whiskey at 100 proof per week. That was the legal prescription amount if you had anxiety, couldn't sleep, sore back, just talk to your doctor.
Needless to say.
Whenever
governments get involved, like they did with cheese, remember that debacle when they changed?
The board thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So after Prohibition, nobody had operating distilleries. So people didn't have the choice of new or used. So people just started building bourbon distilleries, and that's what happened with Jim Beam. Jim Beam just built a bourbon distillery and started making Jim Beam bourbon again. You can't buy used barrels if nobody has used barrels. So everybody started making new charcoal barrels, which was mostly the tradition pre-Prohibition as well. But when they wrote the rules, they're like, well, everybody's using 51% corn or more. Some guys are using 60, some guys are using 80. We'll just say 51%. Everybody's using brand new barrels. So that's how the rules got. And that's protected bourbon as a class. And a lot of people are worried about the rules. Like, well, that's pretty wasteful for wood. Well, the bourbon whiskey industry, which right now there's 9 million barrels of bourbon in Kentucky, which is where the lion's share of it is made. The bourbon whiskey industry can't cut trees down fast enough to replace the organic growth of oak in the U.S. That's how much oak we have in this country. We can't cut it down fast enough. We can't fill barrels of whiskey fast enough for that. But then on top of that, as a result, the rest of the globe has embraced ex-bourbon casks as the container of choice for aging. So the Caribbean rum industry, the tequila industry, the Scotch whiskey industry, they all rely on those ex-bourbon casks for their products. And so, yeah, that's kind of the basis of that rule. They are looking to add, so in America, if you make malt whiskey, which most of us would know as Scotch, Scotch is traditionally aged in used barrels and made from 100% malt barley. In the U.S., the definition of malt whiskey is 51% malt or more, so it could be 49% corn, and then aged in a new barrel, which is the opposite of what we do in Scotland. And so as part of these TTB proposed rule changes, they're trying to create a category that mimics Scotch here in the U.S., which would be American single malt whiskey, which would allow any type of barrel, but would require 100% malt to bring us into kind of compliance with that. Because every other country, except for Canada, that makes whiskey, makes single malt whiskey the way the Scottish do. And in the U.S., if you make malt whiskey, it's nothing like the Scottish. Go ahead.
So, I understand the difference between single malt and blended whiskey. Can you explain what blended is?
That's actually this one. Next slide. So natural transition. Just want to point out one thing real quick. This cool background pattern, that's actually a stage stack. Those are Wisconsin oak that we purchased from a stag mill in Caledonia, Minnesota. And we have those stacks aging in the parking lot. Might not be able to find them very easy today with all the cars, but normally you can find them pretty quick. We season that wood on site for 2 years, and then we send them out to have them turned into barrels. So that's what a raw state is. So blending. Blending is not a naughty word. A lot of people think of blending as you're going to have an inferior product. Think a lot of like American blended whiskey. Blending is a process of taking ingredients and putting them together. And so, in the case of like Scotch, blended Scotch versus single malt Scotch, single malt Scotch has to be made by one distillery, but it is probably still a blend of 50 or 100 barrels. It's all just made at the same distillery. Blended Scotch is the nice comparison because what they'll do is that will be an independent bottler or somebody who perhaps owns a bunch of distilleries, and they buy different flavored whiskeys from different distilleries and blend them together. They also, in Scotland, with the blended whiskey, they allow the use of a more neutral whiskey to kind of soften the whiskey and stretch it. That makes it more economic, makes it more affordable. And so, as a result, it's like your Johnny Walker's would be a premium version of that, but there are also less premium blended whiskeys. Here in America, again, rules, blended whiskey has to be 20% whiskey. The other 80% can be vodka. And so you're not getting whiskey when you buy a blended whiskey in the U.S. But when you buy bourbon, you're buying a blended whiskey. It's hundreds or thousands of barrels of bourbon blended together to taste by that distiller. And so we often have this negative connotation of what is blending. And so I put a press house up here. Press house is our flagship product here at the distillery. And we make about 60 to 80 barrels a year, depending on the year, of press house. So when I go to blend at any given point in time, I might have 40 to 50 barrels that I can choose from that are all 2 years. Some of them might be closer to 3 years. I have some going on to 4 years now. And I can pick from all those different barrels. And some of those barrels are new first fill barrels, and some of those barrels I've refilled. And some of those might be Wisconsin grapes, and some of those might be American native grapes. And we can paint with all those colors to build that blend. And so what we're trying to do is create a consistent profile year over year for you guys. So when you go to make your Brandy old fashioned with it, it tastes how you want. So a couple different, we have two strategies. Basically blend or not to blend. So like Cocard Reserve that just came out in November is sold out now. But that was a single barrel of Cocard. And so we handpicked that barrel for its unique flavor and its excellent flavor. Next year's barrel will be of similar quality, hopefully as good or better, but will have a different profile. It could have a different profile because we didn't try, we can't blend it for consistency. Just a different approach. A lot of people think like single malt is, well, it's just one There are single barrel products on the market, which is basically all the contents of that bottle is from one bottle, but like if you pick up a Jack Daniel's single barrel, that bottling line just bottles 200 to 240 bottles at a time, 24 hours a day. It's just barrel after barrel after barrel, instead of blending them all together. We do have, like I did touch base on those 3 single variety bourbons that will be, or corn whiskeys that will be coming out. And our bourbon that we'll be releasing in December it'll be a blend, but it's going to be batched. And so it will be just one vintage. All those barrels were distilled at the same time, all that liquid. So we basically distilled all the barrels with liquid, put it in a tank, and then filled all the barrels, aged all the barrels, put it back in the tank and bottled. So it's one batch, one vintage. And so our bourbon, our first bourbon that will be coming out, will be a non-blended product. So we won't pull from different vintages to try to even out. So why do that? Why blend or not blend? It depends on what your goals are. So for Press House, we want that consistent experience. We want you to have an excellent Brandy old fashioned every time you open up that bottle. And then, but for us as winery, first, that belief in the vintage, the belief in terroir, the belief in seasonality. With our bourbon and with our Coke Reserve, we want to embrace that variance. You know, that's the variety, is the spice of life. We want you guys to be able to see the difference. Our bourbon will be 4 years old in November, and we plan on releasing it in the second half. So the results, we talked a lot about the rules. There's a lot of rules out there, but all the decisions you make as a distiller are going to be what creates the variety of products you see out there. You know, everybody in America has to use at least 51% corn, has to be aged in a brand new barrel. And there's distillation proofs and all sorts of other rules I won't get into, but those are the rules to make your bourbon. But if you go out to the liquor store and you pick up 10 different bourbons, unless you buy them all from all the same bottle, they're probably all going to taste slightly different. And that is because of those decisions each distiller makes. For us, we believe very strongly in embracing the terroir aspect, the local aspect. We're working very hard to source all our ingredients from as many farmers as possible right near us, particularly Joe Keller. If you saw our bottling line demo, Joe works our warehouse and our bottling line, and he also farms 700 acres about Mile that way. And then we have Phil Marks, who's a longtime family friend, and he's got acreage about a mile that way. He grows the white corn and the rye corn. And you know, sourcing those local ingredients, some years are going to be harder for farmers than others. And as a result, we'll have those flavors translate into the product. We focus very heavily on barrel quality as well, because you know there's not a single winemaker out there that's going to spend the money on a barrel to age their wine and not buy a high quality barrel that's aged, the wood is seasoned for 2 years or anything like that. The guys, the big distilleries, it's all about numbers. So if you're paying $100 for a barrel versus $200 barrel or $400 a barrel, that greatly affects your business when you're filling 500 barrels a day. And so they play the odds. They're going to hope some of them are really awesome, and then the rest of it's going to go into their more economic brands. And so for us, we're investing in those high-quality barrels on every single product. And then your decision. Are you trying to blend for consistency? And even if you are blending, you can create 2 different products from basically the same set of raw materials by just making different decisions on your blends. Or are you going to try to do something that is just unique and pick a very special barrel or a special set of barrels and make a simple batch? Any questions? We have 2 hours and 15 minutes till the doors are locked, so I can stay here as long as you like. All right. Well, I'll be around. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
Upstairs above the winery store in the winery. Thank you.
Good morning.
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 I usually drink water, but that's what I have wine. So welcome to the open house. We have kind of created a different event instead of the self-guided tour that we have had for 30 some years. We have guided tour this year. So you are welcome to take, every 10 minutes there is a guided tour through the winery as well as at the distillery. At 12 o'clock, Paul Shaw will be doing a cooking demo. At 1 o'clock, Bruce will be doing a pruning demo in the basement instead of outside because of the snow and the temperature. And then at 2 o'clock, my son-in-law, Tom, the distiller, will have a talk right here in this room about distilling at the distillery. We are celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Prairie Fumée, and Prairie Fumée was released exactly 30 years ago in March 1989. And so a lot of it, our life around here, this is not our kids, it's Julie and I. And this is our daughter, Celine.
But she looks just as good now as she did then. What happened to you?
Well, and I'm still in love, so. So this is Celine, our daughter. She is the next winemaker to be after me. So she has a Master of Wine Science from Cornell University, and she's in training to be the next winemaker. She will be the 14th generation of winemaker, as I am the 13th in our long heritage of French winemaking. So 1988, when Celine was a few months. Well, let's backtrack a little bit. The winery in 1984, 85, 86, business was rough and tough. You know, cash flow, we didn't know what it meant. Not a pot to be in, that was us. So it was not easy to make a go at the business. And I'm not going to say we contemplated bankruptcy, but we kind of wondered, like, gosh, how can we get going? During harvest of 1988, Julie and I, and Celine was a few months old, went to a restaurant, Pepino Gargano, on University Avenue, across from Brandy. And Pepino, being a good friend, brought a bottle to our table, said, hey, I want you to try this. And it was a Fumé Blanc from California, from Petit Brother. And it just kind of hit me in the face, and thinking that, wow, this is the kind of wine we need. This is the kind of rejuvenation, the new style. That's a wine of the future. Very feminine, very fruity, very light, low alcohol, crisp, fresh and fruity. And it was September of 1988, during fermentation. So that's when I designed and created the Prairie Fumée. And in March 1989, this was the first bottle, the first label. In March 1989, we bottled the Prairie Fumée, we released it to the market, and within a month, it got 4 gold medals. And it was the beginning of a great story. And people from Chicago had read a newspaper clipping of this winery in Wisconsin, Minneapolis Tribune, San Francisco. So there was a little bit of a buzz of this little winery in Wisconsin making this wine and getting 4 gold medals right off the bat. And so that was, and we didn't quite know how big it was going to be, but Prairie Fumée was selling. People people were interested in the wine. And 1990, Stone Mill Winery at Silver came up for sale. And, friendly competitors, but they were staying on our side because they were as big as us and they were competing with us. So when you don't like your competitor, buy them out. That's what we did. So 1990, Jim Page, good friend of Bob and Joanne, called Bob and said, hey, how do you put it back into a business? Okay, what's going on? This and that. So conversation took place. 1990, we bought Cedar Creek Winery, not the building, but the business. And so it became Cedar Creek Winery. Different wines, different price point, different flavors. So then we had 2 wines on every shelf in every store. In Madison and Milwaukee, we had the Wollersheim wine and we had the Cedar Creek wine. And then 1991, a new generation of labels for the Prairie May, and production was going up all the time. And at the time, right where we are sitting, we had a barn, actually a little bit on that side, underneath this sign there. We had a little barn, and we had plastic tanks, and we had insulated tank outside, and we just we couldn't keep up making enough wine, and then we had to build this first wing right here. So this is the fermentation room that you will be there if you take the tour. Offices, the hallway, the break room, and what we used to call the case room, and the bottling room was down here. So that was the very first addition that we had to do in 1993 because we could not ferment anymore outside in the insulated tanks underneath the overhang. So it was time to grow. 1995, 3 big awards, the biggest that we had ever gotten: Blockbuster Wine of the Year because of the Prairie May, Winemaker of the Year, and Winery Improvement of the Year because of what we had done. So that was the biggest award we had gotten to date. 1997, we had to expand again. And this was, believe it or not, this was designed to be a warehouse, and now it's all full of tanks. When you take the distillery tour, this is where we have all the big 50, we have 40, 50 and a big gallon tanks in that room, all custom built here in South City by Badger Fabrication. So this is what we call the big room, and that was 1997. 2001, we came up with a new generation of label. And actually, we just came up with a new label for the entire line, and you would see the new packaging, the new look. 2002, we built a big warehouse in Prairie du Sac. We can put 60,000 cases of wine. That's where all the semi go to get loaded and to unload empty glass. And believe it or not, when we christened the building, Bob and I were holding that bottle of Prairie May. It took 4 times for me to bang it in. I made a dent in the steel post. I could not, I didn't want to swing it like this and spatter everybody, so finally I broke it on the ground because I couldn't break it against the steel post. 2003, 2004, one of our biggest awards, and every year they get a bit bigger. That was Good Lawson. I love to get medal in California because that's where all the biggest peers are, the most famous wineries are. So when you are competing against those wineries and you are recognized with such a award, it's always happy feeling. And 2005 was a big change for us. This is when we came up with the screw cap. And believe it or not, we have done an internal survey with our Kiss Club members. 72% of you Kiss Club members did not like the idea of going to screw cap. Thank God I didn't listen to you. And we went ahead with the screw cap because screw cap is the best closure there. It's better than a natural cork. Natural cork has its place in traditional wine, such as the Chardonnay or Pinot Noir, Cabernet or Syrah, that are barrel aged for months and years. Natural cork is good. It belongs on those wines. Natural cork does not belong on the wine that Prairie made. Plastic cork should not exist. It's bad news. Any wine in plastic cork will oxidize. I mean, it's good. Plastic cork is actually it's the worst closure there is. And how we know that is we measure the oxygen penetration into the wine. So oxidation, think about a green apple. You bite into a green apple, you leave that green apple on the kitchen counter, and within hours, within minutes, within hours, it turns brown. That is oxidation. A white wine is very sensitive to oxidation. So if you leave the cork open on a bottle of wine, within days it changes. It's kind of fading away. The fruit is gone. It's oxidizing. And oxidizing to the end point of oxidation is rot, is decomposition, is vinegar. So it's a natural evolution of any food product, but oxygen is enemy of the wine. So what is the best protection against oxidation is the screw cap. So we measure microgram of oxygen through a closure. Plastic cork is 0.9 microgram of oxygen through the plastic cork. Natural cork is 0.3. Screw cap is 0.03. So that shows you how sealed the screw cap is. So there is nothing wrong with the screw cap. So should a fancy Pinot Noir and Cabernet go into a screw cap? No, because the opposite effect, reduction, rancid, like sometimes the bottle or not turn rancid. A fancy, a big quality red wine will need some oxygen to continue to grow. But it belongs in those wines because they were barrel aged. It does not belong with a wine like the Prairie. So you have to pick and choose. As a winemaker, it's a decision we have to make. And believe it or not, bag-in-box is awesome. I wish we could be in the bag-in-box business. We cannot compete in that price point. Bag-in-box is big bulk boxes. Boxes, big bulk winery that can compete in that price range. The quality is really good. What is coming next is canned. Believe it or not, maybe you guys, your generation won't like to drink wine out of a can, but my grandkids will. That's what you have to do. As a businessman, you have what is the next packaging, who is drinking what. And all the millennials right now are drinking wine out of a can. They're not drinking Miller Lite and Busch Light. They're drinking the fancy craft beer. They're drinking cocktail and bourbon, and they're drinking wine out of a can. So if they're going to drink it, we're going to package it for them. And so Wollersheim Winery became known as the home of the Prairie Fumé. Believe it or not, sometimes people don't even know it is made by Wollersheim Winery, but they all know Prairie Fumé. Sometimes in wine list, you see Prairie Fumé, Sauk City. You don't even see Wollersheim Winery. That's okay. Meadows, Prairie Fumé, and we don't really try to measure against other. I don't really care what other wineries do. And we never took the home, the best, the grandest. That's not our style. It has never been our style, never will be our style. It would be interesting to know, but the Prairie Fumé and the Prairie Rush and the Dry Riesling have to be three of the most awarded wine in the Midwest, if not the entire United States. And Prairie Fumé has 22 double gold. So double gold is when all the jury on the panel have awarded a gold, and it could be 2 jury, it could be 25 jury, depending on the size of the competition. So when every judge on the competition has gifted that wine a gold medal, then it becomes a double gold. But let's say if there is 10 out of 11, it remains just a gold medal. But if it's 11 out of 11, then it's a double gold medal. Best of class, best of show, and gold medal. Actually, right now, it's to the point sometimes we get a silver medal. Okay, good. Gold is better. Production of the Prairie Fumé, just to give you some perspective, 1984 we were at 8,000 gallons total. Today we are at 250,000 gallons just on the wine side, without counting the wine made for the distillery. And Prairie Fumé is a third of that. So it's kind of crazy. Prairie Fumé is a wine that's made on site, meaning that it's 2 a.m. I have to come and check it. Is it time to stop the fermentation? So 1987 was the very first wine where I stopped fermentation. So you have natural sweetness. Stop fermentation meaning that you interrupted your fermentation. If you let the fermentation go, I may as well have a little bit of water in my day. If you let the fermentation go to the end of it, the wine will be dry. So when you drink a Chardonnay, a Pinot Noir, Domaine du Sac, Domaine Reserve, those are dry wine. Dry meaning that there is no sweetness left. All the sugar finished into alcohol. So dry wine, by definition, always have more alcohol than a semi-dry wine. Semi-dry wines have less alcohol because some of the sugar did not go towards the end and towards all the alcohol. So 1987, it was my first experiment on a white Riesling where I stopped fermentation, retaining natural sweetness and less alcohol. Prairie Fumé 1988, and we started with a small tank that was like 800 gallons, and today we saw it as 90,000 gallons just of the Prairie Fumé. So how do we do that? We shock the yeast with sulfite and cold temperature. Cold temperature being 22 degrees Fahrenheit, and just knocks them out. And then the yeast will die, they will settle to the bottom of the tank. Then we do what we call a cold stabilization. We continue to chill that wine down, and it goes into those insulated tanks that are right across right here. It settles in those tanks for 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, we rack the wine, so we leave the mud and the sediment behind, and we put the wine through a sterile filter. So you have natural sweetness, no sugar added, low alcohol, which very few wine of today's portfolio have low alcohol. Low alcohol for us is 9.5, 10% of alcohol is considered low, because most of the other wine, you buy a Cabernet, a Pinot Noir, they have 13, 14% of alcohol. So you have 10% of alcohol, natural sweetness, and my vision on the Prairie Fumé was to capture the freshness and the fruitiness of that wine. And so that's it. So if I have to stop fermentation at 2 a.m., I'm not going to go back to bed and say, well, we do it at 8. It doesn't work that way. Even so there is, we started with 1 tank of Prairie Fumé. Now there's 1,000 tanks of Prairie. So I could say, law of averages. One is a little bit sweet, one is a little bit dry. Doesn't work that way. Bob always used to use the expression, well, if you have a pail of ice water and you have a pail of hot water. You think it feels good? No, it doesn't work. Your law of averages doesn't work. So when we make perfume, it has to taste like perfume. So I come at 2 a.m., check it. I come sometime at 4 a.m., check it. I go back. The hardest is to restart the work day at 11 or midnight. At 3 a.m., you can stay up and keep going. But at 11 o'clock midnight, that's the hardest part of the night to come to work. So perfume fits with anything, from breakfast to lunch. And it's really a wine sometimes we get a little bit carried away. It's all white wine with fish, red wine with meat. Not anymore, go with what you like. Can you have a steak? Absolutely. A Cabernet or Pinot might go better with the protein of the meat in terms of cutting it. But is there anything wrong with perfume and steak? No, as long as it's perfume, I like it. So, and it goes, actually, in every winemakers that we do, I always try to pair perfume with something acidic, like a salad, like the beginning of the meal. If there's anything sweet, sour, perfume fits because it has high acidity, which can compete against any vinaigrette or perfume has been gifted throughout the world. Every wedding in Wisconsin has some perfume in the wedding. This was the christening of the new building, this one, where we are, in 2007. And the story behind this building is a lot of you are Kiss Club members, and you remember the days of waiting in line to taste and waiting in line to pay for your taste. And then a good friend of mine said, man, I live down the road. I can't wait an hour for this one. I can't wait an hour to pay for my taste. So that's when Julia and I really realized that, we are inviting you guys, but we don't have the space to take care of it. So more bathroom, more leisurely space, more cash register, so not all packed like sardines on top of each other. So that's when we did, and sometimes we wonder if it's big enough today. We are happy with the setup we have with this building. This is the new look. This is the new label for the perfume. I think you will see a lot of it in the store May, June, July. It will be a slow process of selling out all the old label and moving into the new one. And it was time for us to have a fresher, newer look on the perfume. And this is what the other blushing rose with the tree and the pathway underneath the tree. Shot of the vineyard with the somber spread. So all the wines now will have their new label like this as they come to bottle. 30-year-old perfume. So I think now Vicky and Julie are going to give you a little taste of the perfume. We will do a toast to my father-in-law Bob. He will be 80 years old today. House cleaning comments. I have
Thank
the
you.
distillery tour to give at 12:10. And then so there's a cooking demo here, but there is distillery tour going on. It happened to be mine at 12:10 because I have to take a lunch rotation to help out there. But there is, make sure you go down to the basement of the distillery where the bottling line is running, where the barrel, the aging cellar is open, where all the spirit barrels are aging. All of us with black shirt are here to help you, to guide you, so make sure, don't hesitate to ask for direction and what's going on next. Sir, you have a question?
2 questions. Is there a difference between sulfate and sulfite?
No. Same. It's sulfur dioxide is SO2, and it takes different form. So sulfide could be SO3. So sulfide could be the stinky part of sulfite. So it could, mercaptan, rotten eggs, that is added to LP gas to let you know that there is a gas leak. It has sulfide added, that rotten eggs smell to let you know that, oh, there is a gas leak, it stinks. So in some extreme case of a fermentation going south, going bad, you have mercaptan, you could have some sulfide. But sulfide, sulfur, sulfur dioxide, potassium metabisulfite is all sulfur. Sulfur is a natural element of the ground. There are 0 wines that are sulfite free because there is more sulfur coming out, natural sulfur coming out of the soil, and sulfite free would be less than 10 ppm. Naturally, in the wine, we have up to 20 ppm of natural sulfite. Do we add sulfite? Yes. Like 99.9% of your winery, and it's been added since 1760s. The Romans used to burn sulfur in around grapes. And there is a very interesting chart, and I wish we would put it up here. If you were to compare the amount of sulfite in wine compared to French fries, salad bar, candy, apricot, dried fruit, the amount of sulfite in wine is like this. The amount of sulfite in dried candy is like this. So it's just like it's not even an issue. It's not a comparison.
The other question, would there be any meat, for instance, venison, buffalo, that you would not serve for a fumet with?
No.
Doesn't matter to go with anything. Octopus, squid, anything.
Raccoon.
Yeah, and, you know, and I'm a bow hunter right up here. I eat venison all the time. Domaine du Sac is my wine of choice to go with venison. But honestly, again, you go with what you like. There is no, you know, this is where it's funny because I've been reading a lot on the next generation, the younger kids generation, and we as professionals in the wine industry should not destroy our own business. And you see, what's interesting, you see the big fight between Coors Light and Bud Light with corn syrup and so on. Okay, believe it or not, all those big beer brands are losing 10 to 15% of market share every year. And now they are fighting amongst themselves. It's not really helping the beer business at large. So us guys, you know, in the wine business, you know, drinking red wine with your little pinky, you know, I mean, the wine snobbery, there's no real wine snob. I mean, I don't want to insult wine snobs, but it's just like, there's so much good wine out there at 12 and $15 a bottle. It doesn't have to cost $500 a bottle to be good. So, and Prairie for me is exactly the answer to this world of keep it simple. You know, it's just like wine, never forget that wine is coming from a grape vine. It is a farm product. To me, it's no different than milk. It's a farm product. It grows on a grapevine. We pick the grapes, we make the wine, and we share it with everybody. So it doesn't have to be $500 to be good. So let's have a toast to Bob and either of them.
To Bob.
Yeah.
How many wax to break that bottle on this building?
I'm the one. I remember too well. So I have a bigger glass than you guys. Yes.
Is there, again, instead of excluding other meats, is there a meat that is best with for information? Not just meat,
no,
but also seafood.
You know, I mean, seafood, yeah, I would say any, you know, I was going to say trout, no. I would go more the shellfish, mussel, oysters, crab, lobster, that direction. If you go, scallops, yeah. If you go the fatty fish, salmon, and trout, you can drink Pinot Noir with this. Pinot Noir is a perfect wine to go with salmon and trout. So would Prairie Flamingo be better on the shellfish, the shrimp, the lobster than the fatty fish.
Are you moving more towards organics in the future? In your newsletter, you talk about reducing.
I'm moving more towards sustainable. And the first step will be the vineyard. It's interesting, and I love the story. A couple of days ago, there was a story of glyphosate Roundup being found in wine and beer. And I'm thinking, you know, stop beating the head. It's funny because why do you think wine and beer are targeted? Because it's alcohol. There's so much pro-prohibitionist movement in this country, lowering alcohol, not drinking, which is all good, but do you want to study cornflakes? Do you want to study meat? Just think about Roundup Ready soybean, Roundup Ready corn. You're talking millions of acres against few acres of vineyard. So let's compare what, in all fairness, let's compare it to what's fair. So starting last year and this year, we are using less to zero Roundup. We are coming up with a flame-throwing device. So is it safe? I don't know yet. Hopefully it doesn't go, but it is to burn the weeds instead of applying Roundup. And that's what I want to stay away more and more to apply chemical on the soil because it goes directly to the water. Organic, no, not in Wisconsin. Too wet, too much humidity. You can watch the fungus grow. Ask the grape grower. Organic is not in the equation yet. And again, organic, show me that it is. There's just article 40% of what's labeled organic is false. So it's just like, you know, do I believe in it? I mean, do I believe in the concept of organic? Yes. Do I believe every label, every organic label? No.
What kind of fungicides do you have to use?
We use, a lot of it is copper-based in co-side. It's a very old concept. And it does cure, it takes care of any problem on your roses. And the biggest issue is downy mildew and powdery mildew. So that's kind of the base of a lot of the vineyard chemical, vineyard fungicide is copper sulfate.
Use any Captain at all?
Yeah, that's the same. It is a sulfur-based Captain, and copper comes later in the year.
I use 3 different kinds of fungicides and I rotate them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I see Eagle Waste back on the list. And Pearl. What did it take to make that? Last year you didn't have any. The year before.
And all, yeah, it's depending, a lot depend on, well, what our rains are this year, I have no idea. It depend on spring frost, winter kill, like right now. So sometimes I have to give priority to ice wine or to Eagle White or to Brandy. So I don't know yet what we will have. Hopefully, and we are gearing up to have more and more. We have growers in the room right here that help us to supply grapes for the Brandy and could go to Eagle White as well. So hopefully we have more and more Eagle. Yes.
Do you have other Wisconsin, do you get other grapes anywhere else in Wisconsin besides here?
Oh yeah. So on site we have 30 acres. 20 acres here, 10 acres at the Marks Vineyard. We have 50 acres, usually family, we have 2. There's 50 acres contracted in Wisconsin for Brandy and Market and other fish for the Prairie Sundance Red. And there is 270 acres in Dunkirk and Buffalo for the Prairie Fumé and the River Gold. And there is 75 acres in Kennewick, Washington for the Pinot Noir, the Pinot Grigio, the Riesling, the Chardonnay, Cedar Creek Cabernet. And the one thing that you should keep in mind, and you know it by now because we have been so transparent about that, we don't grow it out, but we make it out. And that's something that I always stress. We don't buy bulk anything. We don't buy bulk one. That is why I cannot compete in the market with the box wine because our production cost is too high. If I wanted to violate our mission statement and buy bulk wine, that would be the easy route, but if we are winemaker, we make it. So we ferment everything on site. We buy grapes, we buy juice, we buy grain, but we don't buy bulk spirit, or we don't buy bulk wine. It's all made on site.
Good.
11:40, I will head towards the distillery to give my tour. Paul will be doing a cooking demo up here using Prairie Fumé and the Brandy. They are guided tour throughout the day. There's sandwiches by Wheaton Box Meat next door across the little bridge right there. And there's a pruning demo at 1, and Tom is talking up here at 2 o'clock. So there's a lot to see, a lot to do. Make sure you go down the basement of the distillery underneath the store to see the bottling room. Make sure you ask questions. We are here to help you. Thank you.
Good. No, we are impressed with the information you're sharing with the community. So
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.